Are you telling the truth? In this session we will talk about Booleans because they are useful and also lots of fun. Let's get started. I opened Spider. You can use any IDE you liked. I just specify a few variables. I just assign a equal to 7. So that will be an integer, and b is also an integer -2. And now I just want to assert relationships. I just want to illustrate what symbols we can use to assert relationships. For instance, let's do a print function. A is larger than b. And we just execute that, get here printed the statement true. Let's do another print function where we ask whether a is less or equal to b. Let's run this again, and of course you get here the statement it's false, as expected. Now we can also try to assert whether a is equal to b. Used two equal to signs, we basically check for equality, and again of course that will be false, as expected. Good, and then finally we could negate, so we can say whether a is not equal to, so that's exclamation mark equal to b. We could also modify the print function, and you see the different options popping up here using an AND statement. Yeah, so you would make it a little bit more fancy. So for instance, you can put in a few exclamation marks, whatever you want. And we can do a line break. So line break would be indicated using the \n. Good, let's run this and see what happens. And here you get now the 3 exclamation marks added, and after that you get a line break. We can also assign booleans to variables. One way to do it is simply to specify d is equal to false. Yeah, so false or true would immediately specify a boolean. And now you see the type is bool for boolean. And the value would be false. I can also do this assignment making an assertion. So I can, for instance, assign C to my assessment of A larger than B. So in this case, of course, C would be true because A is larger than B. Now, quite often in code you see that in this case people put very often brackets around. Now you don't have to do this, it will be ignored anyway. It just makes it easier sometimes to read. So for me, readability is more important than having a slightly shorter code. Good, what else can we do? We can of course also now go into the AND or statements, so we go into logic and not. Yeah, we already saw negation using the exclamation mark. Now we can also specify the not keyword. So for instance, if I do e is equal to not d, what happens? Well, we know that d is false, so e should be true. Yeah, if you run this, you see e is true. Yeah, so these statements are very useful later when we go into branching. So using if statements and so on, very important. I can assign f to not d and c. Now what does that exactly mean? So now we have to think a bit more carefully. So not d we know is actually true. So that first part is true. The second part C is also true. So if it's true and true, the outcome should be true. Let's see. Yeah, so F is true. So that's useful. Let's go into G and we assign this as D or C. Now what again does that mean? So D is false, C is true. So what do you expect G to be? If it's either false or if it's true, well, you would expect false in this case. Let's see. No, it's true. How is that possible? Well, you have to think always about logic here. Yeah, so and means both have to be true. or means only one has to be true. Yeah, so that's important to note. So it's easy to get confused about this, but again, in the case of G, we know that D is false, but C is true. So either D is true or C is true. In our case, C is true, which makes the statement true. So it's getting, of course, a little bit crazy at one point. Then I want to briefly talk about the Bool function. Again, this is very, very useful because many values can be used to assess whether the statement is falsy or truthy. Good, so for instance I can simply print whether 0 is true or false. Now what do you think it is? And we can do the same now for any other number. Let's just put in, I don't know, 118. Yeah? Let's run this and you can see the first one is false, the second one is true. Now this is interesting, so whenever you have numerics, so in this case we have the integer, any integer will be always true, it's truthy. However, 0 is false. Yes, this is some useful thing to note. So quite often this is interesting again when you do some branching or in loops and so on. Now, what about other types? Yeah, so for instance, if we want to assess whether a string is truthy or not, let's just put in here word. Is word truthy or is it not truthy? What do we get? It's true. Interesting. Yeah. Now, when it comes to strings, the alternative where it becomes not true is basically the empty string. Yeah, let's just see. And you see the empty string, which simply has nothing in there except the quotation marks, that is false.